So I was being told that I stayed there because I had just filed that petition, and then I was told if I wanted to talk to the FBI, I had to be there in person. So I looked for a hostel to stay at, and I checked into one because that was the only thing I could afford. And I really don't know how I had money, except for possibly that I used money for the rest of the way. Either somebody helped me out with the ticket, or I used money for the rest of the way on a hostel instead of getting back to Wenatchee. I remember that my parents basically gave me enough money just for a bus ticket, and I didn't use it for what I said I was going to use it for, because I was trying to do this other thing. I didn't have money for everything. And I remember that because they were upset, a little bit upset, because they had paid for this one ticket. And which was something, you know, the entire thing would have been avoided if CPS had done what they were supposed to do. And they knew that they were required to do that. And instead, they actually made my parents, forced me to basically hitchhike, and tried to forced my parents and other people to cover costs of my being assaulted at a psychological evaluation for them, which did nothing for me and my son. I mean, really, the CPS, I hope, is completely destroyed. I hope that agency and the entire department, I still don't have the right word for it. I don't know what do you call it if a department is put completely out of business. Like the government decides that they're not going to fund it anymore, and they just get rid of it. Well, that's what needs to happen with CPS. And I was at this hostel. There were a bunch of international people there. It was one of few public places that I was tortured. And it happened one time when I was in this smoking room on one side of the building. First, I had met different people. There were a couple of people there from Germany. Talked with them a little bit. There were a couple of people there who said they were from England, but they sound like they were from Australia. And this guy who had the big eyeball tattoo on his arm. One eyeball. There were a few different international kinds of people. I met one man who was Russian by nationality or race. But I don't know if maybe he had been in the United States for a long time or even born there. He was Russian Orthodox. And I remember that because he had a Russian Orthodox cross. That's what he said. You know, he could have been Catholic, but it did look like Russian Orthodox maybe. And I talked with these Australians for a little while. And they said they were from Australia, and I said, so you're not from England and just pretending to be Australian, are you? I remember they looked at me kind of funny. Like surprised. And I didn't really have anything to eat, but I hadn't asked anybody for anything to eat. And then they said that they had they had just made something, and there was more in the kitchen if I wanted some. And I probably shouldn't have had anything that they offered, not knowing what had happened to it, you know, when I wasn't around. But I said okay, and I did have some. And this was about 2 days after I had had a couple sips of soup at that Vietnamese restaurant. And then I was then in a room. It was like a smoking room. This hostel is called the Tortoise or something like the Tortoise. And it's right downtown Seattle. It's very close to the FBI offices, Seattle FBI. And I remember I was being photographed when I was in downtown Seattle at that point. There was someone photographing me. And I went to the flower market and I bought I bought lilies, white lilies, and gave them to the hostel for their vase. And somebody took a photo of me when I was buying the lilies. It was like in an open market, like Pioneer Market type of a thing. Outdoors. And just like a flower vendor outside. Usually I got Stargazer lilies because they smell really good, and they're so large and fragrant, and when I first started buying lilies, I never saw the white ones. I was around Stargazer lilies, so I got the Stargazer ones. And that was back in, like, I don't know, when I was, after I'd moved out of my house, which was and then returned from the East Coast, so that was like 1994 to 1997. I used to buy them for my house in St. John's. And so I think that was the first time I ever bought white ones, or maybe one of the couple times I bought white ones, but not that many times, and I chose those. And brought them back to the hostel and for their vase. And I remember that they had sunflowers already. And so then somebody put them in a vase for the dining room, and I met the Australian people or whatever, or English, whatever they were, who happened to be sitting next to the lilies that I bought. And right after I ate something from them, I never saw them again. And then I met this Russian Orthodox young man. He's very good looking, tall, and he asked a lot of questions. He seemed kind of just interested in my situation, and I was talking with him. And then we were in this smoking room at the Tortoise, which is that hostel. And all of a sudden, I don't know if he felt something or if he was part of what happened to me or not. But if this Russian Orthodox man felt what I felt, he had to have the same symptoms as me, because we were both in this smoking room when all of a sudden it was like this big kind of another sonic boom type of a feel, like something shook and that room almost, but it's like it impacted my body. And it was kind of like what caused me and my son to throw up, when something like similar, a weird pressure, compression feeling in the atmosphere around me happened to both of us, and both my son and I were throwing up at the same time. The exact same kind of compression thing happened in the atmosphere, except I didn't throw up, and I wasn't nauseous. Instead, I had to instantly go use the restroom. And I'd had that happen before when I was being hit by some kind of technology, aerospace defense technology, that almost caused me to black out. And then I would have to use the bathroom, and usually I had like this weird, horrible diarrhea from whatever just happened to me. But I didn't have that blackout feeling. It was like something else, and I went to the bathroom, but it was similar in the sense that it did cause me to need to use the bathroom instantly. And I went to the bathroom, and then all of a sudden I could feel this just expulsion of, and this is going to be really disgusting. I really apologize for talking about this, but it is a fact of being tortured in this country. And if I don't mention what they actually did to me, I don't think it gets the severity of the crimes against me and my son across correctly. So if you could just pretend that you're a doctor for a moment and used to hearing about really gross things, then that would be great. I used the restroom, and instead of having a normal bowel movement of any kind, it felt like liquid water gushing out, like explosive and gushing out, and it was so watery that I didn't know. I thought, what in the world? And because I had just eaten that food, I wasn't sure if it was that or from this, what had happened with this Russian guy standing in the smoking room. This kind of air technology feeling. And if it happened to him too, he had to have had the same reaction. I mean, he would have had the same symptom. So only he would know. And then I turned around to look into the toilet bowl because I was really shocked at, you know, why I felt that way and what was happening with my body. And it was solid blood. And I've talked about bleeding, how I have maybe a blood clotting problem and hemorrhaging type of a problem. But this was not like that at all. This was basically like I had been given a bunch of rat poison. And I was bleeding from a bunch of... Basically, rat poison will thin your blood so badly that you bleed to death. Like if you die of rat poisoning, it's a kind of chemical that causes your blood to thin so that you bleed internally and you bleed to death. If you have enough of it, it causes all your systems to shut down and you die of internal bleeding. And I already had like a predisposition to clotting problems. And when I was leaving Wenatchee, and what I had written in my report in Seattle was that I was being threatened about being a rat. So all of a sudden I had this, when I looked at the toilet bowl, it was not like pink or just kind of red, just slightly red because of, you know, a little bit of bleeding. It was the entire toilet bowl. It was this color. I mean, I don't know if you can see that. See how red that is? It was, I'm not exaggerating. I swear to God above, God, I have to swear to God because God already knows. I swear to whoever, I mean, that I'm not exaggerating. It was maybe one shade darker than this. It was bright, bright red. The entire, and it was that solid red. It wasn't watered down. It wasn't a different color, slightly red, but not completely. It was very bright red. Maybe a tone, because I'm sort of an artist and I can look at the tone of stuff. I can't totally see how this is going to turn up on film. But from what I can see barely, with a blur a little bit, is that this is coming across slightly as redder than my lipstick right now. It's probably somewhere between a shade between this and maybe the color of my lips. But closer to this color. Like regular blood, when you have your blood drawn, it turns up more like maybe my lip color, or maybe I'm going to show you something else. And I think that the color of blood is important because it helps determine how long that you've had bleeding